What is going on, and welcome back. Which cards in Marvel Snap consistently win you the highest amount of cubes? Brode has a new watch list for cards that are going to be nerfed. We've got December new cards to talk about and new bundles that have made their way to the shop. We're going to talk about all those and more on today's episode of the Snapchat. Now, moments before filming, Alex told me he's not feeling great. He's a little under the weather, but he still showed up for our weekly podcast. What's up, man?
Hey, I'm not going to miss this. Honestly, yes, my voice is giving out suddenly. But you know what? This is like my favorite time of the week.
You know, you're not going to get that crisp, smooth Alex voice that you guys have grown accustomed to, but this will do as well. I'm going to try to carry more of the load on this podcast, but Alex, thanks for showing up. A lot of you have been asking, are you going to have guests come to the Marvel Snap podcast? We plan on doing kind of a bi-weekly guest here in the future, so we're excited to announce that. Before we start today, I want to say a huge thank you. Because of you guys, I tweeted out earlier, Alex, we are at the number 4 spot on the top podcast, as far as Apple Podcasts go, at least, for the charting gaming podcast. Now, here's the fun part, though. I realized this week that we were in the wrong category. All right, we were in the board game podcast category at number 4, and you know, that was still pretty cool, but I wanted to put us in the right category. So we were number 4 there, and I expected, to see kind of maybe, if we were in the top 100 in video game podcasts, that would still be awesome. Alex, we are still number 4, even in the video game podcast category, man. How awesome is that?
It's incredible. It's so funny when you told me that story. I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it.
It's just blowing me away, and it really means so much to both of us. It's why we show up each and every week. So we've got great subjects. We already kind of covered the ones I'll be talking about. And on Alex's side of the channel, we're going to be talking about biggest token shop regrets. Which ones have you bought in that you wish you didn't? We're going to talk about both of ours. Then we're going to open up that conversation. The developer roadmap has been announced. New features and game modes coming to Snap next year. We're going to break all of those down as well. And then, of course, cards with huge value. This is our last podcast, Alex, before the holidays. And so if you listen to this either on Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, if I'm missing other, winter holidays, Boxing Day for my Canadian over there. What is Boxing Day, by the way?
It's like fake Black Friday.
Fantastic. All right. Alex, let's go ahead and let's start with the first subject, and that is going to be what cards are the most consistent, high, and reliable cube-winning cards? Not ones that are just good cards, not like the best combos, but cards that are going to win you the most amount of cubes. What is your first one off the bat? Just kind of curious what you think.
I think you're going to agree, and I think you're going to love it. It's Arrow. I mean, think about it. You got a 5/8, immense power. You have a 5-turn play that disrupts someone's board state. You have a turn 6 play that disrupts someone's board state. What is not to love about Arrow? Incredible variants all across the board. Probably the best variants in the game. And an absolutely incredible card. And I mean, that's the thing. You can play Arrow on 5, you can play Arrow on 6. There's never a wrong time to play Arrow. It's just such a fantastic card.
Alex is doing my job for me. I'd even have to bring up Arrow on this show because he did it. Thank you so much. We got our kind of tick done. Arrow, guys, awesome card. Now, when she came out, I think she was a 5/6, or maybe they had her at a 5/6. I forgot. And then she went up to a 5/8. I think a 5/7 is going to be her kind of perfect value. We'll talk about that on the watch list for our next category. Arrow is just a great card for many reasons. You don't really have to use her just for the power, although that is a nice boost as well. But she kind of follows the category of a lot of cards we're going to talk about in this first subject. It's not cards with immense power all the time, even though our next one does have that. It's cards like Magneto, cards like Arrow that throw off all of the quick calculation that your opponent was trying to do on turn 5, going into turn 6, and you just mess up their game plan, right? It's controlling cards are usually the highest win rate or the last addition of power cards that I think definitely net you the highest amount of cubes typically possible. So Magneto, Arrow, that's why they're such great token shop buys. They can plug into a vast amount of decks. And for that reason, same as Magneto, just high power cards, Alex, fit into Lockjaw, Hela, right? You're going to be using these cards kind of all over the place. So yeah, those are the obvious ones. Leader, Deathwave, guys. These are clearly high cube winning cards. I don't want to always shower you guys with the same old cards that you guys hear about every day. I don't know about you, Alex, but I'm always thinking about, how much power are they about to add to their side? And I kind of go through some quick numbers, and I always forget to just add the possibility of doubling what they have at the location.
Yeah, Iron Man's incredible, and it's one of those cards that's so good because it's in pool one, but like it always has value. Pool two, pool three. There are so many decks that can really rely on Iron Man, and then when you add someone like Mystique, by the way, who's on my list for cube winners, like Mystique, Iron Man, insane combos, especially when you consider what you can do with like Silver Surfer now. So like Mystique, Iron Man, incredible cards. I love Iron Man. Like how can you not? And it's funny how you mentioned that like you always have contingency plans for like certain, kind of plays your opponent might make, but Iron Man throws a wrench in that can be very difficult for you to like math around, so to speak.
Yes, Iron Man's up there, and that's going to bring me to the next card that I kind of want to talk about with power, and that's going to be Giganto. I'm trying to get more people on the Giganto train, and I'll tell you why, Alex, at least when I'm playing, and viewers, I don't know if you're the same, on that turn 6, right, you're kind of quickly trying to run through your head, just like we talked about, what could they play? What could they play? And Alex, like, what is and we talked about this, I think, on a podcast before, but what is a card that you're kind of usually expecting power-wise? Like, for me, it's usually the Hulk, unless I'm going up against, like, a Destroyer deck. Like, that's the max amount of power that I'm kind of thinking, like, a 12.
Yeah, 12's usually, and even then, like, 12 usually catches me by surprise. I'm always calculating Chavez for sure. But, like, yeah, 12's kind of like the baseline. 14 with Giganto is never accounted for. Like if someone drops Giganto, I'm shocked. I'm just completely shocked.
Yeah, and so that is why he's such a good card. It's not because he's just a 6/14 that can only be played in the left lane. Yes, you have to have some calculation around it. But first of all, Giganto better than ever right now because the world is running Leech, and because of that, you can play him in any lane. But at the same time, again, your opponent is not thinking about 14 power being dropped at once in that left lane. It allows you to set up a game plan and go for another lane and then win it on the left. I mentioned that in my new control deck guide. So definitely for me, this has been a big one for cube wins because it throws them off, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about. So other cards that I would like to talk about that I think still do a great job, Alex, with that. You have the tried and true. You have Spectrum. Now, Spectrum, I would say probably more as we kind of get through the game and more players come in. Just a Spectrum play isn't as good as it used to be. I think you see a bunch of ongoing cards. You see a Captain America. You see a Colossus. You're like, all right, it's Destroyer or it's going to be plus 12 to the whole location, right? Like that's kind of, or plus 8, should I say, not plus 12, to the whole location. Spectrum isn't as big as a surprise as she used to be. But one card that's in pool 1 that I think is constantly kind of underrated, that is a cube winner. I'm telling you guys, I don't play it a lot. I could play it more. It's got to be Claw, man. I think he does exactly what we just talked about, right? He throws off what your opponent calculated. And the fact that he can get to what is right now pretty high up in the meta of these control-ish decks and shutting down lanes with Storm, adding that 6 power is just a fantastic addition, man. I don't see Claw a lot, man, and I think that's the biggest reason why I think he would be a huge cube winner and why I have lost to him in the past.
It's funny you say that because in casual conversation with Snapster described Claw as the Marvel Snap's top cube thief, where no one expects Claw and no one actually plans for Claw.
Yes, another card easily that benefits from Mystique on, especially if you get into that magic play. Mystique is definitely up there. A turn 6 Mystique in general. Like, people see the Patriot come out. People see these other ongoing effects happen on turn 5, and they're just not expecting the turn 6 Mystique. Now, lastly, a couple other cards I do want to talk about, and one that I don't know how we haven't brought up yet. And it's one that I think it's just extremely hard to predict, right? Extremely hard to predict the spread of power. You've got Dr. Doom. Now, arguably, if you think about Claw, he's going to get plus 6 in one lane and then 4 in his lane, I believe, right? 4 or 5. He's got 5 power, but that's across all lanes. So he's giving a bit more than Claw, giving that 4 in his and 6 in the other, 1 less on that one lane. But he's going in an additional lane than Claw is. You get 5 power across the board. I don't use Dr. Doom enough, even though I know he's a great card.
Yeah, you know what? Dr. Doom's amazing. I mean, in my Electro ramp list, like, it's literally the foundation. Leader, Doom, Odin. Like, it's so good, right? Like, it's just so good. And you're right. It also possible Patriot synergy as well. There's so much, like, going for Dr. Doom. It's truly an amazing card.
Lastly, some other cards I want to talk about. The last two kind of unexpected high cube winners. Valkyrie's up there, but I want to talk about... first of all, clearly, guys, Arnim Zola, I think Arnim Zola is an interesting one. I think he falls in both kind of schools of thought. If you're going to play him behind Black Panther, are you going to get the best value? Yes, right. That's obviously such a great combo, but it's expected. That's not a high cube winner. They see a Black Panther by themselves, or at least they should get the hell out of there if they can't beat that power, Alex, especially under Wong. But where they don't see it coming is the Arnim Zola play in the other kind of lanes that they weren't expecting. Maybe a Red Skull, some other options out there. Arnim Zola is, I think, my fourth, maybe third split card. Is this one you use a lot?
You know what? I actually want to use Zola more. Zola is one of those cards that, like, in my head, like currently in my head, I'm trying to design around Electro a lot more. Zola's on that list where it's like, okay, how can I be creative with Zola? I think this is an untapped card, honestly. So it's a card I definitely have my eye on.
Well, my favorite new synergy with him, Alex, for sure. No question about it. We'll talk about it in the new cards in December, but my gosh, I call it Armin Nola, and it is disgusting. Trademark pending. It's disgusting, man. So what Arnim Nola is going to do is if your Null has 14 power, all right, because a card's been destroyed. When Null gets destroyed, because Arnim Zola counts as a destruction, he counts that in his copy. So he'll turn into a 28. It's so disgusting, and it's so reliable, and it's probably one of the best uses for Null. We got to talk about Gambit. I think Gambit is one of the better high cube winners in the game because, my gosh, you can simply set up the Invisible Woman, Wong, Gambit, Odin lane, or even just the three of those, and you've got yourself probably a win. And it's because of how filthy he is, man. It's so crazy to wipe the enemy side of the board, and I think because of that, he's a high cube winner, Alex. Okay, so Alex, for the next subject, Ben Brode tweeted last week. He said Galactus is on the watch list. Now, I've got to say this to open up. I love that. I think this is actually healthy for them to kind of say, hey, we've got our eyes on these cards. Doesn't mean they're going to get nerfed, right? But it kind of just gives us a little bit of a glance of who they're looking at in Marvel Snap. And I like the openness of the devs as a whole. Ben Brode, just one of my role models. I love his energy. Love him as just a creator. Alex, it's official. Galactus is on the watch list, and I'm going to explain why I think he's there. But we're going to talk about other cards we think are on the developers' watch list. Now, this doesn't mean commenters, viewers, listeners that we think these cards should get nerfed. I just think it is cards that they probably are at least keeping an eye on at the very least. Give me your first one on the list, Alex. What do you think is a top watch list contender?
I mean, we talk about it, I feel like, every week, but Death probably needs to be adjusted.
I mean, we're going a month back now where I said Wave needs to adjust the cost because what I see the most of is the She-Hulk and Death. So I said this on a video that I released yesterday, my Destroy Deck Guide, and I kind of compared Death to other archetypes in Snap. I said, let's take discard, for example. Not Morbius, but let's say there was a huge power discard option that every time you discarded one card, that cost went down. Immediately, Alex, you're going to see the discard meta go way up. That's a huge card. That happens so much in a discard deck. And in Destroy, you obviously want to destroy cards, and you're able to destroy other cards. So it's even actually better than a discard because of how many times you can destroy. I think it's not Death as a whole. I think she's just a good card. Like, they can't get rid of her at this point. It's the wave and the cost reduction. We've talked about it. It's got to be fixed. It's got to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a major combo that it's been long lasting for a long time. And as you add additional cards to this game, it's going to become more and more oppressive. And I think that you've touched on this in the past where like some cards will really create a design problem moving forward. And like Death and Wave kind of might have that problem.
Yeah, it's really just, it's the cost reduction. I'm telling you guys, if I see a card with this cost one less, if blank happens, I'm buying it. Like, it's a good card in Snap because of curve, because of value. Definitely on the list. You guys know that by now. I actually have a lot of cards to talk about on the watch list. Again, these aren't ones that I think are, going to get nerfed necessarily, but they definitely have their eye on. But more importantly, and this one I think is awesome for discussion, do you think that Iceman should get looked at? And this is a card that I see a lot about, and it's tough. I know it's tough, but I just wanted to bring it up. It's a 1-cost, 2-power card that is doing so much for 1 cost. It's giving you 2 power, and it's throwing off curve. Hell, it makes Professor X, Magic, and a lot of other cards completely worthless for a 1-drop. There's no reason not to run the card. I think it could become a 1/1. I really do.
You know what? You're probably right. Like, this is a insanely good card. And it kind of has the problem that Angela had, whereas like, if you're going to put a 2-drop, you're going to play Angela. And if you're going to put a 1-drop, you're just going to play Iceman. And it kind of, it's I think objectively better than, what's his name?
Cork.
I can't remember his name now. Cork, right? Cork's still good. Iceman's better every single time. And I don't think you should have a card that is always just better than another.
So that's why I think it's not even exactly what's happening. It's the same thing that happened with 2-cost cards, right? Like, for instance, a lot of people might think that I'm going to put Scorpion on this list. I'm not. I think Scorpion competes with other 2-cost. Very good card. Insane value. Insane. But there are other 2-cost options. Actually, there's plenty of them. With the 1-cost options, there are other 1-cost, but at the same time, like, Hood has his con. The other ones you have to put into specific deck types. You know, Nightcrawler's pretty universal. But for the most part, Iceman's just like, hey, put him in any deck. That's why I see the developers putting him on the watch list. Those of you guys that love him, I get it. I think he'll still be good at 1/1. You're going to get what you want, but the 1/2 is kind of what takes him to the next level. So that's definitely one that will be on the Ben Brode watch list. I've got a couple other spicy ones. You know, we talk about this kind of every week. I do want to mention it one more time. I to my core, Alex, and it's really because of the leader issue. We'll talk about that in a moment, obviously. To my very core, I think that Mr. Negative is just a problem for down the line. I just don't know how you keep him in the game if you ever plan on continuing to do. Because the developers have talked about it. They don't like to do major nerfs. They don't want to change, like Galactus. His ability isn't going to change. They're not going to completely swap what that card does. They try to just do power adjustments, right? Just power adjustments. When you do power adjustments, it makes him better. And it makes negative Bex better. And so unless they have a way to address that, I just think that he's going to be the first card that gets an ability change. I think potentially. Or he's like a -8 play. Something crazy, something ridiculous. Like, you get to just kill one of your lanes, but then maybe on the last couple turns, you could play big on the other ones. Alex, I think he's a problem. And we talk about this all the time, but I do think he's going to be one of the biggest issues with power adjustments.
Honestly, I said this literally on stream last night. I was playing Bass Negative. I said the list was underwhelming. And I said, honestly, guys, I just don't like playing negative decks. Like,
yep.
I got to tell you, I just don't like playing negative decks. Yep. Like, I totally see what you're saying from a design standpoint. I don't think negative decks are as good as people think they are. I know that's a hot take.
No.
But really, like, it's so inconsistent. And that's running Bast, who makes negative 4/3. Let's not forget that this card used to be a 4/4 in beta.
Yeah,
right?
And everybody played it, and that was the meta forever, right? I mean, this is the thing. I think that it's, first of all, I said before, I think he's like move decks. The people that love him. The people that hate him don't get it. They're like, I would never play that. Like, it's just, I never get him. Like, whatever, right? You know, you play 10 games, you happen to never get him, or you get bad luck with him, or whatever. Completely understand. He's definitely fun. I think his strongest suit comes from your opponent not knowing which cards you have in negative value, and there's a lot of cube wins that you can get. Another high cube winner on your list to add. Now, leader is obviously one, Alex. I want to hear one more from you, but leader is one that, here's the deal, guys. I did a poll, okay? And my poll said, what is your most hated card right now? Who are we hating the most in Marvel Snap? Alex, I could not get 60% of America to say chocolate and ice cream taste good. We have 60% of people from 4 toxic choices picking leader, and that's not some, that's almost 50,000 players saying that leader is the card they hate the most. I mean, he's on the watch list, obviously, yeah?
He has to be. He absolutely has to be. And if he's not, I'm disappointed.
I think a lot of people will be disappointed. It's funny that there's kind of 2 schools of thought, and I kind of ride on them both. I'll be honest. I think that I think there's kind of some arguments for both camps. I think that leader feels easily the worst to lose to. Easily. Like Death Wave, kind of your fault. Leader, yes, you can predict it, but damn, it feels bad, Alex. And so he definitely is, guys, he's not going to change what he does. It's not going to be it's your location only. I don't think that'll happen. I doubt it. Maybe turn 5, maybe, but I do think it's just going to be small decreases. I think it's going to be maybe a 6-3, then a 6-2, or maybe just a 6-2. See how that goes, bump him to a 6-3. That's where I see him being kind of touched up. Now, I do want to say this about the meta and the different cards out there right now, like Cosmo. We've got leader. Really with Leader, he's important to be what he does in the game to counter things that might pop up, like Death Wave, right? Death Wave has been a problem for a long time now, and Leader is that answer. But then you need an answer to that answer, and then it kind of just keeps rolling. And so that's why I keep going back to the cost reduction from Wave affecting Death, because I think cards like Leader, Cosmo, Enchantress, Arrow, these control cards, they're important. Like right now, we've kind of talked about it before. I've touched on it in my meta deck report. But essentially, you want initiative early. And then how do you win the game? You just control the opponent or you outpower them. It's important to have these metrics in place because if you don't, then all of a sudden you just have one deck that does really well. Like On Reveal is so dang solid, man. Like the Black Panther, Arnim Zola, you know, the Wong combos. But we've got Cosmo. Now, do I think they could adjust Cosmo? I think maybe they should bring him up to a 4 cost, potentially. Maybe, you know, get his power up there to be a 4-4. Maybe a 4-5 probably feels a bit better for the higher cost amount. But that's my main focus. I think Leader is a control card that's important, but at the same time, he definitely needs to be just changed up. I find it funny that Brode hasn't talked about him with so much public backlash on the card. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I have a hot take on this. I think that winning with Leader feels bad too. Honestly, it feels low effort.
Yeah, I mean, for that reason, I don't play him a lot. But yeah, it feels bad because you see what your opponent's playing, and you're like, hey, I feel you. I get why you just snapped, sir. I get why you just snapped, and I've got this Leader in my hand, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know, and it does. It doesn't feel great. I saw an amazing post the other day. It's the same feeling of losing one cube feels like winning. Winning one cube feels like losing. It's like a weird kind of backwards take on the cube system too.
On my list, I had Maximus, but you touched on it because you're a genius. But I think Maximus could take a look. We have so many tools to mitigate Maximus's downside that he, as a 3/7, he's just huge. And you're seeing him being played more and more.
On turn 6 especially. We're definitely talking about him for value. You can see him right down below there. He's easily one of the best value cards in the game. Thor feels okay because you have to get the hammer, and he scales well. Maximus, you're right. Could they bump him up to your opponent draws 3 cards? Does it matter?
It doesn't. Like, he's just an overall excellent card. And I feel like, as I said prior, like his downside, it doesn't even feel like a downside sometimes. And I think you hit it. Like, who cares? You got 2 extra cards. I have a 3/7 on the board. What are you going to do? Or you just play him on turn 6 with Surfer. Like, who cares? Like, wow, you got 2 cards on turn 6. Congrats. Like, what are you going to do with them? Nothing.
Dude, I've been doing things like Shuri and then playing him on 6 and playing Surfer. And I'm like, I'm playing 14 power plus the Surfer 17 power with a Maximus 3 card. Like, it's insane. With no con to it, right? So definitely 3/6 though hurts my feelings, right? It's kind of sad. It's gonna be interesting what would happen to him. I think maybe they'll adjust his drawing number potentially, but we'll have to see. Cool. So those are the cards that I think are going to be touched up out of all of them most likely. Alex, we've got one more subject to talk about. We briefly touched on the new cards that have come in December, and it feels kind of cool with the cards coming weekly. All right, Alex, so let's start with the bundles. Now, we've got 2 different bundles to talk about today. We've got the Shielded Heart, which we've kind of already talked about our viewpoints on these bundles already on our last episode of the podcast. But for the Shielded Heart, this is just a dumpster fire of a bundle. I think this is a definitely pass for most of you. Even me, who's a whale, and I like to create, and I want to get these bundles. I pass on this. There's no reason to get it. But I'm not a big fan of the art style, so I would take that into consideration. You would get early access to Invisible Woman and Doctor Doom if you don't want to rely on pulling them through the regular, base cards. Do keep in mind, even if you get these variants, though, you're going to have to pull them eventually. Now, Mr. Fantastic has plenty of other great variants out there as an added note. And you get 3,000 credits for the 5,000 overall gold that it costs for the bundle. But the Winter Wonderland, Alex, this is a bundle that I can get behind, all right? First of all, I already bought it. You can see right here, 8,000 credits for you audio listeners, 100 Sunspot boosters, a new title that says Tacos after this. And then we have an avatar for Sunspot and 2,000 of those sweet collector tokens. Now, if I'm going to try to describe the variant, you've got a Sunspot Bachelor version ready to mingle with the honeys, rubber duck in the tub. And this card actually looks fantastic. And Sunspot's a card you use all of the time. So that's just an added bonus. Another gold amount, it is a lot. 6,000, gold is nothing to scoff at. I would say the variant is definitely going to be a 1,200 variant either way. And if you don't spin on the game, just don't even look at it, right? It's not there for you. It's going to be there for those that are going to go ahead and whale for the game to continue to make it a free-to-play experience. But two other things I want to talk about. We also have the Winterverse. We have a new you open up caches during this section and you have a chance to get these different variants. That's fun. I like it. Some say they hate it because they want, a more guaranteed way to unlock them. Where I think it's huge, Alex, is like the Patriot. Bro, getting the Patriot with an increased chance right now, if you don't have them, the base card, that's huge, man.
Yeah, it's significant. It's not something to sleep on. Like, those being added to the pool of rewards, especially when you're kind of fighting through pool 3, is significant.
It'd be cool if they do that like on a season basis, not just for this. Like if they add like, unique rewards that you can get. Because then for us, even that's cool. If you get a variant that's only, obtainable, whatever. I think that'd be pretty cool. Rogue is the other one, Rock Slide, and then I believe Ebony Maw are the other few new ones coming out. Rogue is another great card that you could grab from there. Kind of surprised they put her in there with the new, the last bundle they did. If people wanted to buy their access to Rogue, and now you can just get her through that as well. But that is one other thing they've added. They have a login calendar with Nick Fury. They have a signature Nick Fury card. I'll throw it up on the screen. Sexy. Samuel L. Jackson. Dude, I love this. I love signature cards. That's really cool and a unique take on a variant.
It's awesome. I love it. I think that is such an interesting way to kind of do the variants, and I'm really interested to seeing what it looks like when it's like Infinity. Or shiny logo. Does the signature change? Right,
dude. What I'd get for a Hugh Jackman Wolverine, but yeah, I think that's a cool way that they can start introducing that, or even like the artist variants have the signature. Sign me up, man. I'll do that all day. Really cool stuff, and definitely love that they're giving out a card for free, even if it's not a great card. It's an okay card at best. I think it's better though for those. Just to talk about it quickly, if you run Devil Dinosaur, it's actually a decent card. Don't let everybody kind of shy you away from it. I think it's a card that can work. I love ramp decks, and honestly, it feels like a very good ramp card. It doesn't feel good playing them on 5. It feels fantastic playing them on 4. And then you build yourself up. And so I like them for ramp decks a ton. That works with Devil Dinosaur because you're not playing a lot of cards. That's where I slot them in, if I'm being honest. That or kind of a Lockjaw feeling deck, collector deck. That's where you guys can fit your new Nick Fury that you're all going to unlock. But now, let's talk about the new cards, Alex. New cards that we have coming. We briefly talked about them before, and now they are all out. Now we have the opinions on them. The opinions have come. And this is what I love about just all video games. You see something, it looks broken, they come out, and you realize it's not as bad as it seems, right? And so the first one we're going to talk about, no question about it, and it's because I shelled out 6,000 tokens, is Mr. Null. On paper, Null looked like a busted card. And Null is a good card. It's not a busted card, it's a good card. And that's great to see, right? It's cool to see something that looks way better than it's going to be. Alex, have you gone against Null yet?
I have. And I actually have had it pinned in my shop forever, and I'm not going to buy it. Because I think that when Galactus, or if Galactus gets nerfed, Null's value goes down.
Yeah, so I think, and I talked about this in my Destroy video, I think that they're going to adjust what is a graveyard. Currently, guys, graveyard is anything that's not discarded. Anything. If it's not discarded, it counts as a Destroy. They're going to fix that, I think. I think they're going to adjust that. And that's what's making Null crazy in Galactus decks. I think he's the reason behind the Galactus nerf a bit. But Null is what I like to call a win more card. Do you need him to win the game? No. Does he win you with a lot sexier of a number? Yes. He is going to work. He's only going to get better. I actually think he's being a tad bit slept on from some top people that think he's like average. I think he's actually probably more A tier. And I'm making him work. I've been trying to make him work with Dracula. It's really fun to build him up, not play him, have Dracula take it at the end there. Got to have some things kind of work out. There's some other combinations that you can make him work in. Mr. Negative, obviously, but you have to have that. The real big thing about him is that I kind of like him in the sense of a tech-ish, not tech card, but if your opponent's playing Destroy and it's so popular, you just kind of have him in your deck, and you're like, all right, he's an option. I'll keep in my back pocket, and if my opponent wants to play their big death, like I got Null behind me, right? So I think it's a fun card to throw in that you don't have to do Destroy, but it just continues to make that archetype even stronger. I will say this, Rogue is always talked about as a counter to him. I don't think it's a good counter. It doesn't really work in theory because the problem is nobody is going to risk a 3-1 Rogue on the last turn trying to predict if you even have Null in your inventory or on a location. Man, I'm bad at finding cards today. I don't think that's a great counter. I think that there's no good way to counter Null. So Null is good, necessarily not amazing yet, and that's what I love, but I had to get him. Doing a destroy in Def Guide, I'm like, I had to have him to really make him work. The Arnim Zola play is definitely the best way to get him to be even better. After Destroyer with Magic, there's been a lot of fun interactions. Still a lot of experimenting to do with the card, but let's go ahead and talk about the other new cards on our list. Darkhawk is kind of unlocking a new archetype like we thought it would, and he might be the one I go for. Sentry was more my playstyle. Darkhawk looks very interesting. Let's start with Sentry and end on Darkhawk. Are you going to buy him from the token shop number 1?
You know what? It's so hard to say. Like that question's so hard because like the tokens are worth so much. And it's like, okay, I would love to experiment with both Sentry and Darkhawk, but am I willing to spend 6,000 tokens that basically took me a month to farm? Like, that's it, right? Like, I only get to play one, and it's so hard for me to make that decision.
Yep. Well, I agreed 100%. It is tough to decide. I think Noel, and we'll talk about that on your side of the channel. With Sentry, I think he is a card that offers a lot more that meets the eye. He's kind of interesting. I think there are definitely, this is the issue. Every new card can't go into pool 5. That's the biggest thing, because Sentry feels like a pool 4. And I would also probably argue that for Darkhawk as well. And if they were 3,000 tokens, sign me up, dude. I'd buy him right now. No question about it. The 6,000 roll of the dice is tough. It is a tough roll of the dice. And if I was leaning one way, I'd probably go Darkhawk between these two. So looking at Sentry here, I think he's going to work best, obviously, in those 0 decks. I think he'll be fun to throw in there. 4-8 is definitely above, the average value. Jessica Jones can meet that. You definitely have things like Crossbones or Typhoid, even a Tuma. But those come with, like, real big cons to them, or at least a Tuma does in Typhoid. The 4-8's fun. Now, everybody kind of goes to that Viper build, Alex, but I think a kind of unique way that you could play him is in a very control-y based deck. You can fill out the right lane very early, throw in like maybe a Mojo in there to protect you from people seeing your play very early on. And instead of just relying on the Viper play, just fill the lane. Fill the lane out and play him on 5 or 6. And then the -8 Hobgoblin, for those that don't know, he's going to be played at big value, but then he puts a -8 on the rightmost lane. And so it's very interesting on how to play around it, but I think filling that lane could be the strategy that you see to take the most advantage of that card.
Yeah, you could even use someone like Invisible Woman. So you can play him on top of Invisible Woman and then fill the right location so that the -8 never has room to drop.
Absolutely. I think 0, a lot of people are saying about 0. I play a lot of 0 decks. I think that he's an option to throw in there. The problem with that is, like, you could already do that with some of these other cards, and I think there's just better I would do a Tuma or Typhoid if you're going for the 0 deck, personally. But yes, I agree. He's going to fit perfect in those toxic decks, though. Like, absolutely great. Love him in there. Love him in the hazmat kind of debris decks as well. So that's where I see him, and I think he kind of fits one of those two molds. But now let's transition to Darkhawk, Alex. Darkhawk, I think, just opens up an archetype by himself. Very fun, interesting, a little bit different card out there. Alex, where do you want to plug him into? What do you like? He kind of has that Ronin feel, but it's for the opponent's deck. He's going to get +2 power for every card in the opponent's deck. It is going to be a 4/1. What do you like him?
You know what? It's funny you ask that because obviously there's like the Korg and Rock Slide synergy, but I think it's got to be more than that. And I actually had this thought. I'm like, I wonder what's coming out. I wonder what's coming out that we don't know yet that's going to really activate this card, because I think that's what's going to happen. I think this card is going to like be decent enough, and then all of a sudden there's going to be a release in like February that skyrockets it.
Yep. So like on average, you have a 12 card deck. Okay. Typically you end up with about 9 of those cards. 8, 9 of those cards. Sometimes you can get more. You can get up to 10. That's the average. So if you just look at him as a pure value standpoint, he's going to be a 4/7, right? Which is pretty nice. Not bad. In fact, if you look at him compared to what we just talked about, heck, compare him to the card literally that we just brought up, he's one less than Sentry on average, right? So if you're looking for that kind of role altogether, but there are ways to make him even stronger. Now, first of all, he's obviously going to be somewhat of a small counter to our beloved Lord and Savior that is Thanos because of just the massive deck size that he's going to have on. But Alex, I think that there is some really cool decks you can make. I was kind of theory crafting in my head. What could I pull together? What are cards that we have now that add to that opponent's deck that you can build up over time and then you throw on the surprise kind of Darkhawk? And where I think it is, obviously Korg, right? So you got a 4/9 with Korg. That's kind of nice, right? Rock Slide, +4. Even better, like we just talked about. But then you can go and start combining him with other archetypes. Like Black Widow is a card that I consistently think is not talked about. I like her a ton. I think she's very solid for disruption of your opponent. I use her more than probably most. But with Black Widow, she's going to send a Widow's Bite over to the opponent, and they can't draw a card that next turn. So what does that do? It adds to the deck, right, Alex? So I think doing like an Odin combination with Widow's Bite or doing a Scorpion followed by her, and then you got some Rock Slide in there too, you can build up Darkhawk to a huge deck, man. A giant deck. Throw an Odin, and you can do a Odin on top of your Korg, Rock Slide, Black Widow, and or really just Korg and Rock Slide. And all of a sudden, turn 6, you're adding another, 6 power to your Darkhawk. That's insane.
Yeah, and when you drop the like wave on, when you drop like Black Widow wave, and then you Odin on top of the wave,
yep,
you're restricting their ability to dump their hand as well with wave for 2 turns. So you might be onto something really cool here.
Yeah, so Rock Slide is definitely one too, man. He's just such a cool card that I just wish he was better, and this is kind of a way he fits in. And Korg's already good. So I think if you are kind of a fan of the toxic kind of playstyle, this is one that's just going to slot in there very nicely. And Disruption in general. Disruption is a fun deck to play. It's not meta. There's a lot of ways around it, mainly because of Destroy. But this counters Destroy because you're going to have it in the deck, and it doesn't matter, and you've got this giant Darkhawk on the field. You're probably going to have to play him later because people can kind of either counter him, Shang-Chi, something like that. But I really like the synergy and things that you can do to make him a lot better. Guys, that's all we have for my side. If you're audio listening, we're going to be switching to Alex's 3 different topics on his side of the channel. If you want to catch those topics, head on over there. I think we've got a lot to look forward to and a lot of anticipation. When you're game of the year, we expect some big things happening January, February. I'm excited to see down the line how they fix mistakes and how they continue to grow the game that we all love. Alex, thanks so much for coming. Guys, thanks for coming to this version of the Snapchat, and we'll see you on the next video.